Okay, thank you, Cynthia. And I feel kind of sad that we have to talk about a POS like the Pope after such wonderful person. But here I am talking about the Holy Cant again. You know, the same POS who said that victims of child abuse were slandering his bishops and who's in charge of the biggest mafia, criminal mafia in the world, who is aware of the most hideous crimes by the Catholic Church and now is trying to wash the image of the Church, which, by the way, has recently been accused of abuses and holding women's lives by at least 43 South American workers who got held slaves at several Opus Dei installations in Argentina, Paraguay, and Bolivia. Why am I talking about this awful person? Because he is considered a holy saint practically in our world, and he's now in Canada. Well, he went to Canada, a place that I'm sure you remember as this place where the Catholic Church buried over 6,000 children, Native American children, who got tortured, who died under the care of the Catholic institutions. And now the Pope is over there, kind of asking for forgiveness. But it's this became a disgusting show for me. Why is this so disgusting? Well, if you check the article, you will see how they are putting this thing with feathers, this kind of crown with feathers on the head of the Pope, and that is a symbol is a headdress, and they have been historically a symbol of respect, worn only by Native American war chiefs and by warriors. And for many of them, many of the Native American tribes, it has a huge significance because it has to be earned through an act of compassion or bravery. And there is nothing compassionate or brave about somebody saying, "Oh, yeah, we kill and murder your children, are bad, this is so terrible." And even worse, Hollywood has turned this symbol into a joke during the time, and a Halloween costume, which has been considered an insult by many people from Native American tribes. And they are just turning into something that you give it to somebody who doesn't deserve it. And that is really an insult because people who get this, they are supposed to be considered amazing people and they have to be recognized by the people. And some of the some representatives of American Native American tribes, they complain that this is a sin which is described as pageantry, and that the statements Pope of we are sorry, it's facile, because well, I want to quote somebody. His name is Bruce Diabo, and he says the Catholic Church and Canada are collaborating in creating a mythology for a shared reconciliation agenda, narrated by prominent federal collaborators and residential school survivors. And finally, I want to say it's very sad that school survivors, those children who were tortured and indoctrinated in the Catholic Church, now pay respect to somebody who is representing the institution that tortured them and murdered several of their classmates at the schools where they were buried. So this has me very angry, very upset, and I want to know what you think, because the Pope makes me very, very angry, and I don't want to talk too ill about this awful, disgusting guy. And yeah, it makes me sad. It makes me very angry. That's my point.
And
Yes,
rightfully so.
it should make you angry. It makes us all angry. But let's go ahead and just get some thoughts about this particular article. Malty, you had some interesting things that you found about this particular story. Could you share it with us, please?
Sure, sure. I was able to find a short interview that Chief Wilton Littlechild gave to a Native American journalist to describing why he gave the headdress to the Pope. And we could put a link in the show notes for that if you want to watch it. It's just a few minutes long. Um, and what Chief Littlechild said was giving headdresses to dignitaries or statesmen is a proper way of showing respect to a person of high standing. He was saying that there was precedent, and when his family, the family, so I'm not quite sure who he meant by that, was appropriate to give that gift to the Pontifex, however you pronounce his name. But when I look at it, and I see what Chief Littlechild was trying to express, I think it fell a lot on deaf ears to the greater indigenous population, maybe to younger indigenous people, because the responses that I saw to that posting were a bit aggressive. Let me quote here from this is Twitter, but this one person, Mark, says, some people receive such gifts that recognize their lifelong work in our communities. Many Native peoples believe that the Pope has done nothing to receive such an honor. Perhaps gifting the Pope with Native art or a Pendleton blanket would have been more appropriate. Which wasn't that like the ones that were covered with smallpox, the blankets?
That is exactly what that is.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
digs like that. Definitely people have do not see the Pope as a person that deserves respect. Than in what I was reading here.
Yeah. I
I
gathered that
totally
as
understand and share the
well.
feeling.
Yeah, I gathered that as well when I was reading the articles, that you did have mixed emotions coming from the crowd when they saw him being bestowed this honor. It was definitely an honor, but I'm going to save some of my commentary. Kelly, can you please chime on in? What were your thoughts when you read this particular article?
Yeah, sure. I kind of saw the headdress sort of as an acceptance of the Pope's peace offering, sort of like a way to heal the past. And it made me wonder if the Pope had given the chief one of his miters or his zucchettos, would that have caused such a stir? Would that have made everybody get so upset? And I don't think that it would have. And it actually got me to wondering if the Pope had more than one mitre. He's got to have more than one mitre, right? But
Pretty sure he
the
has a
fact
minor in like every
that the chief,
country.
yeah, right, yeah,
That,
he's got one waiting for him everywhere he goes.
exactly.
But
Got it.
also the fact that the chief and many of the attending tribal members had been in these religious schools, actually experiencing them, says to me that they generally wanted to bury the hatchet. That this was something that at least the leaders of the tribe wanted to do. Now, in any group of people, you're going to get members who aren't going to agree with the leaders, right? Let's go, Brandon, right? So I have to ask myself, what's more important? Is it accepting this, accepting that the apology for these past atrocities and trying to make a better future with that apology, or arguing about compensation? And I can totally see both sides of that argument. I can totally see both sides. And we all know that the church will pay up, but all you got to do is take them to court, right? So I don't know how the court system is in Canada, but I think if some of these tribal members really wanted compensation, they ought to go and follow it through legal matters. So I'm really torn on this subject completely. The one thing I do want to say, though, this is not just a Canadian thing. The USA
Hmm.
had state-sponsored schools doing the exact same thing, and we're
That
just
is
now
correct.
starting to talk about it. My big
Yeah.
hope is that when we see what came out of this meeting, is that we can start looking at ourselves here in the United States and realizing that what we did, not through a church, but through our own United States government.
I believe
Yeah.
there is. We reported on this on the nonprofits a while back that
Hmm.
We did.
the
We
Biden
did.
administration has added someone to his cabinet to actually look into this. Is that correct? If I
Hmm.
remember right.
Right.
Yes,
Well,
that
yeah,
is
like I
correct.
said, that right. This
That is
conversation
correct.
is just starting here in the United States, and I'm glad to see it. I, for one,
Yeah.
am really glad to see it. So,
So
Um,
go
another
ahead.
thing that we report, another thing that we did report on was a talk about compensation to survivors of these schools in Canada. It's just that the funds were being held up for arbitrary reasons. And I I don't know, guys. I have mixed emotions about this as well. Um, I get the reason why Chief Wilton Littlechild bestowed this particular honor onto the pontiff. I think that's what you were trying to say, Malty. However, I felt that the apology to Indigenous children and to Indigenous people for basically taking their children away from the families to indoctrinate them in Western culture and Christianity, torturing them while they do it was empty. It feels the same way how the sexual abuse cases and acknowledgement of sexual abuse of children from the Catholic Church, that apology is a dollar short and a day late. And still having to try to make people whole and not even working in a proper way with authorities to make sure that the people who even committed said atrocities are even brought to justice. And it it baffles me that this is still, I don't know, a sorry for 2004 type tour that Pope Frankie's on, yet there is nothing of substance, in my opinion, when we're actually talking about making people whole, redressing the wrongs that have been done for years. I mean, these particular state-sponsored schools, because the government was also in cahoots with the Catholic Church when it came to setting up these particular schools. And I I would think that the government of Canada and even in the United States, I know the United States at least has a Bureau of Indian Affairs, and there are different packages for Native Americans per se, as far as like trying to make do trying to make right on some contracts and things of that nature that the government defaulted on. So there at least is that, but there is still a needed action. I want to say past conversation, because it's known about what has happened. It's known about the torture that these children went through. It is known about the atrocities that these particular schools wrought on the residents. And
Mhm.
it's now time to get past that, to talk about what does it mean to repair? What does it mean to make these people whole? What does it mean to actually bring about some form of closure? Even though you will never be able to completely wipe the, for lack of a better term, sin committed against these people, but damn, try.
Yeah, you remind me that the Canadian Relations Minister Mark Miller made some pretty scathing remarks about the gaps that Francis's apology um, had in it. He said that they could not be ignored. That echoing criticism from some school survivors, Miller noted that Francis did not mention sexual abuse in his list of abuses, nor that endured by these children. He only listed physical, verbal, psychological, spiritual abuse.
Hmm.
Miller also stated that Pope Francis spoke of evil committed by individual Christians, but not the Catholic Church as an institution. So those are two very large omissions, to what he said in his apology. Um, to go on a pilgrimage of penitence, penance,
Penance, yes.
seems to be that it's like he's looking at all of Canada as his confessional, and it's one and done. You say his Hail Marys and let's move on. That's not how it works.
No, it doesn't.
I just want to say that the words of the Pope, they seem empty because they are absolutely empty. This guy is saying, "Oh yeah, we are totally, ashamed of this," and then they go and do absolutely nothing to repair the damage done to the community, to the victims, to help those victims, even to help find more corpses, because we know there must be still thousands of corpses buried that the church just erased the graveyard so people wouldn't find them, and those families still cannot find their children. And the Pope did absolutely nothing but say, "Oh, sorry, some of our people are evil," and that is the worst and most bullshitest excuse ever. And I just want to mention once again about the gift given to them, because the gift in several of the tribes means that they have adopted the Pope as one of the leaders of the community.
Right.
Imagine giving the biggest honor of your representatives and turning him into a leader only because he's saying, "Oh yeah, sorry we murdered your children, so sorry." It's freaking fucking disgusting. And as usual,
Yeah.
the Catholic Church and his representative, the Pope, they are being disgusting. Yeah, sorry, Cynthia.
Yeah. No. You're right. It's quite disgusting, and I know I personally get triggered by tokenism, and this is kind of what I see here. Um, it's it just reminds me, like, as you just said, Teo, just taking like one of the biggest honors of your particular culture and bestowing it on the representative of a murderer of some of your loved ones. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of 45's Charlottesville speech when he said, "There's good people on both sides," and it means that there is very little accountability and responsibility that's being had or taken place by the Catholic Church when it comes to these particular atrocities. I uh it's more like, hey, I'm sorry, but you need to stop talking about that now. A matter of fact, I think that one of the people who actually saw the Pope's sorry penance tour said that if you want to help us heal, stop telling us to get over it. We can't get over it when intergenerational trauma impacts every youth and every member and every family who had a residential school survivor. Instead of getting over it, I'm asking you to get with it, get with learning about our history, get with learning about our culture, our people, who we are. That was Chief Desmond Bull of Lewis Bull Tribe who said that during a news conference. And I feel you, Chief Desmond, because it's not enough to just say that I'm sorry. Yeah, we had like some bad people who did some bad things, and we cool, right? No, no, we're not cool. Because the main issue right here is that not you just didn't have bad people doing it. Your institution was complicit because it didn't take the right steps to stop it. It went on for years. These particular residential schools with the tortures and the people who survived them was going on from the turn of the century up into the 1970s. Just think about that for a moment. That's a long time.
A long time.
A
Is
very
it
long time.
is it really surprising that they didn't mention sexual abuse in the apology? I mean, is that really surprising from the Catholic Church?
No.
And how do you compensate for for completely killing somebody's culture? And that's what happened here. I mean, it wasn't just that they abused all these children, but they literally killed a culture. They made a nation of people not a nation of people anymore. And that to me was one of the biggest crimes that we haven't really talked about, because that to me was the worst part of what happened. That entire nation was destroyed.
I've got two suggestions.
Please.
Prosecute those that can be prosecuted for it, and represent and reparations for those that are survivors. And
I
they're
totally agree.
working on some.
Hmm.
The prosecution, I think we're still working towards.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
I
celebration had to be the moment to ask them to do stuff, not to give him an honor that doesn't deserve.
agree. I definitely agree. Let's fix this, Catholic Church. Stop just going around just apologizing for things that you do and actually put some action to your words. And that's all we got to say about that. Is that all right with everybody? Well, it's not all right. It's not all right, but I'm just saying. Oh my gosh, this makes me just so mad. This makes me just so bad that this again. We talk about this type of stuff a lot here at the nonprofits, and it just seems like that they just keep getting away with the same bullshit over and over again. I it grinds my gears.